set.
Good evening and welcome to the Limerick Planning Board meeting for May 1st, 2024. You can stand for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we had 2 site walks today, and now we have 2 public hearings for Deerfield Heights. Joe, if you want to get up and tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Joe Stanley with Line Pro Land Surveying. Here representing Bryce Legier for a minor subdivision project up off of Range E Road. The site is just over 6 acres in size. It's predominantly currently a field area right now. What we're proposing to do is create 2 lots utilizing existing road frontage along Range E Road, and then create a 3rd lot in the back utilizing a private way which would cross a portion of lot 1 to get to the hammerhead turnaround in the back. Otherwise, I think everything's pretty straightforward. The site is sort of situated where it slopes gently from the roadside towards the back. Where we got passing test pit locations for soil septic systems are shown, and we're also showing proposed home sites relative to those septic systems, just for everyone to get a feel for what the project might look like. I think that's about it. I'm happy to answer any questions the board or the public may have.
Does the board have any questions? So Joe, that road, the lot, I don't know if it's 2, the one on,
This one here?
they have that one there, is
Yeah,
that
lot
big
1.
enough? That's lot 1?
Yeah.
We talked about this.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm helping you out.
No, but we talked about one being on the left and 2 read left or right, so
Yeah.
maybe we'll get it at some point. So anyway, is there enough land, not including the road, on that lot?
Yes, and we show that resulting square footage and acreage in smaller text under the acreage size here. We did check that, and if you exclude the area within the 50-foot private way, we still have enough road frontage and land area to meet the standards for those
Okay.
2 items for that particular lot.
And then the lot on the top, I'm assuming that's 3?
Yes,
That
correct.
one has enough road frontage with the hammerhead?
Yes, along here. This,
Okay.
the 175 feet, this went to 6 stems across there.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak?
I would.
I think you gotta go to the microphone,
It's okay.
right in there.
Walter Ricker, Range Road, in the bar.
Yeah.
My only concern is, as you said, the land slopes towards the back. So when this is processed, where's the water gonna run? How are we gonna get that water not to run onto neighboring properties?
So can you show me where you think the water's gonna run? And where,
Anywhere that they put a road in or to the homes and the driveways,
uh,
so that's gonna abut my property
uh-huh.
and
So you're worried that it's gonna flow, they're gonna change it to flow towards you?
correct.
Okay.
So, instead of having a swale to run it towards the street, like it
Yeah.
should,
Yeah.
and away from the neighbors, and away from their homes,
Mhm.
that's the only question or issue I got.
Do you wanna speak to that? Joe?
Sure. Yeah, I can do it. Thank you. To explain some of the information, so What's currently the situation here is there's a culvert that crosses under Rangy Road, and there is a bit of a drainage run that heads down in and sort of would collect in this general area. And so per your new ordinance, one of the things we're doing is creating a drainage easement around that particular run to make sure that can't be messed with at any time in the future. The land does continue to slope in this direction, but most of the disturbance would be, you know, at least 150 feet away from this back property line. And then per the details of the ordinance, we are showing a ditch down this side of the road, and also the details for, you know, turnout, basically a little level splitter where we anticipate any of the water related to this first 350 feet or so of the private way would be directed into this particular area over here on this side of the turnaround.
So you're expecting to put some culverts in to go across and go?
Well, there already is a culvert here. We weren't proposing any culverts, but we are proposing ditching down the side of the road per the detail that's on here, and then towards the end of this ditching, this turnout level spreader that sort of takes any collected water and spreads it out into that area is what's being proposed on the plans.
How's that gonna affect that first lot there, or that first house? Is that gonna be?
Well, the passing soil septic system was, you know, the passing soils for a septic system was, all those test pit locations are up towards the road, so we're anticipating any future house construction on that lot to be situated up towards the front of the property. This particular area would be a good 150, 200 feet from any proposed building areas.
So you're not proposing any culverts going across the road and trying to drain out into the other parcels?
No, we're not. You know, most of these home sites, you know, whatever added impervious areas there, you know, the general slope of the land would kind of just carry it back behind the buildings. You know, I think the only, you know, potentially substantial water course is just, you know, it looks like back in the day a farmer or someone dug a little bit of a drainage ditch that kind of catches any storm water from the other side of the road and deposits it in this area. There's a little bit of a wetland area situated right about here that any of that stormwater sort of collects.
Does that answer your question, or somewhat?
Somewhat. Like I say, my only concern is it doesn't flow any more than what it does naturally now to my property, because I'm going to end up losing crops back there, which I've already lost in the past with not going down the back road, but with this applicant on the other side of my property. I've lost property, so this time I want to keep an eye on that a little better.
Okay.
And hopefully the town will regulate that and follow it.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I do know that culvert's a 2-foot culvert. My concern is putting in the private right of way at this point. You're gonna ditch along the side, so it's gonna create more runoff towards Rangy Road, correct?
No, the runoff heads away from Rangy Road, and we would not be trying to collect, we would just be trying to collect any water that fell on the 18-foot wide gravel road. We wouldn't be trying to dig anything bigger to redirect any water on the house lots themselves. We're just trying to catch anything that falls on the gravel and put it over in this area.
All right, so it's gonna go into a buffer area, so the The drainage area that you've marked here, is that gonna increase any flow towards the ditch? We've already got a runoff issue on Rangy Road, which they're going to address this year when they pave it and ditch it. But if we increase the water flow, it may increase the size of the culvert, which is something we need to plan for. That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, in this particular case, the topography and the flow of it actually runs away from Rangy Road. And we're going to develop that 30-foot wide drainage easement to protect the current drainage as it now flows away from the road. So if anything, my opinion, this project would help maintain the current flow of water. It's going to prohibit, that drainage easement will prohibit a new owner from doing any grading, doing any earthwork, and obstructing that existing flowage away from the road that it is now. But the road already sits higher than the rest of all this, so your water's running in that direction.
So would it be another idea is to, before this water runs off onto this property, is a retention pond to catch some of the water?
I mean, we could make some sort of pond or some sort of, even like a wooded buffer area, maybe a larger non-disturbance area here, if that's what yourself and the board would like to see.
And I wasn't around, but when Croaky subdivision was put in, they had a similar issue when they had to put in a retention area to divert the water away from other properties as well as the road. So that's why I'm asking. But naturally, the volume of stormwater is going to increase with development in impervious areas. So a small retention area may be required.
While you're up there, Stan, the road standard for this would be how wide, and it would have to be paved?
Well, if it's only servicing 2 homes, it's considered a driveway, but the pavement really is up to the plan board. The plan board can add the condition to it.
But they're using it as road frontage, and that changes it to.
So if it's used as road frontage to keep with the consistency that you've already done, then yes, it has to be paved.
It has to be paved, and what is the width that has to be paved?
The right of way is gonna be a minimum of 50 feet, and the travel way to accommodate, two-way travel is a minimum of 22 feet.
22 feet paved,
Yeah.
and it needs to be built with the different layers of base
Yeah,
that.
the sub-base and the base and, yeah.
So does it being paved affect how the water's gonna run then? Versus, does it being paved affect how the water will run then?
That will affect the runoff, the stormwater runoff, because again, it makes it an impervious area versus a pervious, so the water doesn't get a chance to absorb. And if we get the amount of rains that we have in the last year, it really doesn't matter, because the water doesn't get a chance to absorb before it accumulates anyway, so the damage is there. That's why I was asking about the size of the culvert.
So your concern, and I think is Mr. Langford, is that right? Is that, or? Sorry, so your concern was the property behind number 3, the third lot?
Correct.
And so is the water that's running from the culvert and that's going to the between what's 2 and 3, and you said there's almost a collection? You said sort of a wetland there, does that continue on all the way back?
No, it's
No.
right here.
It's a field, once you get, there's kind of a stone wall and a tree line here, and it's all mowed field again back in this area, but there is, some wetlands vegetation in areas where this drainage
Right.
ditch is sort of spilling over into
But-
this area.
But the lot and the house wouldn't necessarily increase the amount of runoff that's going in that direction or through that, what exists as a runoff zone there now, correct?
Well, if you're running the road towards the back, it
Yeah.
will.
The water's running this way, so it is running to the back. That's what
Sure.
Joe Stanley just
But
made
it,
clear.
right,
so-
right, understood, I was just saying from what you're, it seems like what you're talking about is two different areas of that area, of those properties. There is one area that has significant runoff today into that spot, and that, the houses and the lots or paving the road may be something different, but that wouldn't necessarily change tomorrow you know, in terms of how much runoff, so paving that section of road is gonna create, you think, that much more runoff going back there?
It's gonna, depending on the amount of rainfall, right? But by putting a small retention area, it will actually preserve the wetland area and allow the water to get absorbed before it goes any further here. So it's kind of the status quo.
You mean, and when you say that, you mean the water coming off the roadway?
Well, the roadway, depending on how, if they do it by road standards, the water's gonna run to both sides. And
Got it.
depending on how the land pitches, which Joe Stanley's saying pitches to the back, so it's gonna create a flow towards the back.
Right, and by virtue of the fact it's impervious, it's creating more water going to that left side.
So having a pervious area on each side of the road that's not paved will allow the water in the ditching, will allow the water to absorb before it gets beyond. Now, this will also be paved, so there'll have to be a gravel area to catch.
So, rather than creating a sediment pond or whatever,
Yep,
would it be more beneficial to leave it natural and extend the drainage easement a little bit onto that third lot?
and that's what Joe was
I
mentioning.
think that I'd rather try to keep it natural and try to keep, rather than creating more of a problem and
Right, the same idea as I have, we want to try to keep this area as natural.
as natural as possible. I think that's my thought on that, so. I guess we can just, do you wanna keep discussing that now, or do you wanna kinda go over that in our discussions?
The only other thing I would add is when we did the site walk, you had pointed out a couple test pits, kind of where this hammerhead was, where it didn't meet the right drainage standards for a septic. You know, so that would mean that they're kind of slightly more impervious than they would be. So that's the only other piece of information I just want to put out there.
All right, is there anyone else in the public that would speak? If not,
I'd just like to say,
go ahead.
you know, I'm gonna let you guys do your own thing, but the more water we push this way, whether it's natural or not, it's more water that's gonna head to me, right? So, I'm just trying to be fair, keep it in mind, and I just don't wanna lose any more cropland, you know, I can't.
I understand that, we have to fight
I
that
mean, if we,
every day, so.
you know, if the swale should run to the road, as far as I'm concerned, should run to the road and down the road. That's more work, but that's,
I don't think it's
That's
really
the way-
possible, is it?
No, I mean, to get the water to run the opposite direction, we'd have to build this up 15 feet in.
well, you dig your swale deeper going this way.
Well, I mean, what you're gonna end up with, if we're chasing this grade, these are 2-foot contours, by the time you get here, that ditch would be 10 feet deep and act like a pond, and water would run in it.
Well, you guys, I guess I'm gonna leave it up to you to figure it out, but, and hopefully the town's gonna follow up and hold them to standard.
That's it? All right, thank you. Then I'll close that public hearing and move on to the next one for 48 Alair Drive. You want to give us a little overview of it and?
Sure.
Go from there.
Good evening, Andy Morrow from BH2M. So this is a 1.38 acre parcel, 48 Alair Road. There are 2 existing houses the applicant is currently constructing on site. He is looking to split this parcel. Lots will be served by public sewer and public water. We have proposed a access easement, if you will, over lot 1 to provide both frontage and access for lots 1 and 2 over lot 1 to get to lot 2. We have made some changes since the board saw it. We added note 17, which we talked about at the last meeting, regarding lot 1 and its shortness, if you will, of the zoning requirements for lot standards, so the access drive could not be turned into a public road until that was brought into compliance. We did add a no parking sign at the end of the turnaround, as discussed with, or recommended by the code enforcement officer at the last meeting. And the applicant has agreed to pave the access road as required. That was added to the plan. We did have a site walk this evening. I think the only real issue we discussed was potentially adding a no parking sign at the end of the road, kind of down in here, making sure the owners of lot 2 weren't parking in the area where people would be turning around. So I think the client is fine to do that. I'm more than happy to add that to the plan as we come back to you. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll throw it back to you and happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me. Does anyone from the public have any questions or concerns? Anyone from the board have any thoughts?
Yeah, so, there's a couple things. I'd like some more clarity on where, if we use the hammerhead as road frontage, is it just the 22-foot, and this is probably a question for you, Stan, is it just the 22-foot area where they can't park or the whole 50-foot swath?
It would be just the hammerhead itself, so the 22 feet.
Okay.
It allows, and the same thing with the other subdivision, the hammerhead should be labeled emergency parking only, or emergency vehicles only, because we're running into the problem, people are storing equipment on them, and then if there is an emergency, we can't turn around.
So, we use the right of way as the width of the right of way as the footage for to calculate the footage. So it's just like the way Joe did it on his. It's the same here. So I think what you're saying is the calculation for road frontage is the 50-foot marker.
Yeah.
Does that change your thought?
Well, I mean, that's kind of where I was getting is, if it's counted as road frontage, I just wanted the clarity of where, what's actually treated as the area where they can't park, because you can see that the 50-foot area goes pretty much right in front of their house, making it almost impossible for someone to kind of park a car there, which is, I think, the concern we brought up last time. So.
Well, and again, the hammerhead is actually between the two homes, but if they park in there, they've been given the notice. It allows the town or the emergency vehicles to maneuver or remove the vehicles without any legal issues on it. But
Yeah.
in most cases, people adhere to no parking emergency vehicles only versus this is a fire lane or a no parking area. For some reason, people don't really get the gist, but when they consider it emergency vehicles only, they.
So I wouldn't think that you wouldn't be able to park on the area that's not paved. If the road is wide enough and it's paved, we did what's required for the turnaround. That is no different than the right of way going by anybody's house that you technically can park in front of your house, but you don't really own it. There's a lot of times there's a section of right of way there, so.
Well, under legal terms, the roadway is the paid service or an area that's not within lines. If you're going to pull off the road to avoid tickets or an emergency, they always tell you to park off the road, so the vehicle tires are completely on the opposite side of the white line or on the dirt. So that is the legal term
So-
for that. But
If a car was parked off of the road but in the right of way, as long as as long as there didn't happen to be a bunch of circumstances where a fire truck came in and couldn't get turned around, and then that would be kind of up to you to say, hey, you're parking in an area that's unsafe, and, you know, maybe you need to move over 10 feet or whatever, so.
But they can,
And I think that that's kind of reasonable. I think that that's something that apparently the constable or the sheriff or the state police deals with, isn't it?
Well, if it's an emergency, it's gonna be more of the state police in that case, because they actually come in during those fires. But as long as they're off the pavement, and we do have a development that they were parked on the pavement, but they do have trailers now on the dirt area, which is fine. It leaves emergency vehicles enough room to maneuver.
So-
And that's the other thing with the weight, we don't want those emergency vehicles going off the pavement onto the shoulder.
So would they ever be able to, like, would they be allowed to pave an area within that right of way in front of the house for them to park, or it would always have to remain?
They can pave it.
Okay.
That's right. And it is gonna be paved, I believe, right up to the end of the road. The driveway doesn't necessarily have to be paved,
Right.
but the road does,
Okay.
because that's part of the road frontage.
So, where this is kind of a private road, I don't think there's gonna be any real issue with them paving up to their house.
No.
As long as they're not parked in the actual, what we would consider the street.
Correct.
Okay. I went in there tonight and I missed the sidewalk, but I went in just to kind of take a look, and I tried to back around in what was already there, and it was extremely tight. So, I think with taking the trees out and putting the turnaround in between there, I think that's gonna be a lot better.
Yeah.
This does need to be, there's some trees that need to come out on the beginning of that, entry, and there needs to be, ditching on that side, so. That will have to be done. That's part of the road standard, so.
So was this originally proposed as just two houses on one lot, but it was permitted that way?
I'm sorry, again.
And then was this originally proposed as two builds on one lot and allowed, and then we're subdividing post-building?
But it was, and after that, we weren't aware that he was gonna divide the lots originally until he pulled the permits, and then that triggered the subdivision, so. The original lot is over 40 acres, and with the new amendments, the 40 acres are exempt, so that kept the Carrolls from having to file for the subdivision, but the Hands, because they divided that lot, they created the third lot, 2 and 3.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Do you have something? Nope. Close this public hearing?
So on both the roads, so everybody knows, I worked very well with the road commissioner, and prior to this, it was Bob Richardson, but now it's Scott Purdy's. So road standards, before I sign off on the final occupancies or the completion, Scott Purdy's will be with me to make sure that all those standards, and I don't miss anything. So I know I'm not perfect, but I'm very particular, so I always ask for help to make sure that 2 heads are better than 1.
On a road that is going to be a town road, or is likely to be a town road, they can, you can request that they do borings of the ground to, and compaction test as well, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So. Did you have something for the, where So discussing Alair Drive, did you have any questions on that?
Nope.
Alright. Any other thoughts or questions? Nothing yet? Okay. So, close this public hearing and then we'll go on to the review, I guess. Start with you, Joe.
That's not really for the planning board, no. All right. So, good evening once again, Joe Stanley with Limerick Surveying, representing Mr. Bryce Legier. I think everyone in the room, besides my client who just walked in, heard the original introduction. So, for the most part, it sounds like we have most of the issues ironed out. I do want to review the ordinance, make sure our details is for the width and materials for the road is up to your standard, because right now what we have presented is not exactly in line with the 22 feet and the potential pavement that Stan just talked about. So I'd definitely like to review that ordinance. During my previous review of it, I did believe that there was certain situations where driveways or private ways accessing one or two lots may not need to be paved. So I definitely would like to revisit that on my own and make sure I understand where the board is coming from in that request.
Because you're using it as road frontage, you need
Yep.
to create a road to town standard.
Yeah.
In order to, and if you're not gonna use this back lot as road frontage, then would they need to have that, they'd have to still have a 50-foot wide right of way, but they wouldn't have to have, but they just don't have enough frontage on that lot, so.
Right.
Yeah, I was under the impression, and again, maybe that was missed in our ordinance review, but I was under the impression there was a standard in the town ordinance for private ways and private drives that did not require pavement. So I will absolutely revisit that and make sure for the next meeting our detail is where it needs to be for you guys on
Okay.
that particular issue.
Alright, so that number 17, I would think that we may not wanna have that. If it's gonna be built up to town standard, and if someone did petition to have it a town road, then I think they should have that opportunity, so.
Okay, we can revise that.
I mean, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to be, but, they could petition at some point to have that, is that correct, Stan?
They can petition it, but it can't be accepted unless it is.
Built to town standard, so. And it has to be built to town standard if you're gonna use that as the, frontage, so. I don't know about building the road in and creating the frontage. You don't really have, because you don't have the lot that goes down by the side of it, you can't use the sides of the road. You can only use the end of the road. So you have, there's no way to have that other than to build that out and build the hammerhead. Or, yeah, I guess that's the only way really. Do you have any other questions or concerns for us?
No, unless you guys have any other questions or concerns, I think
I think you may wanna extend that, the area, the drainage easement area.
Yeah, you're envisioning some sort of, maybe,
Do you have-
just mark it up, but,
you don't have-
something like that.
You
There is a stone wall and some trees here which will prohibit water flow across that property line to some degree.
So those are 2 foot contours
Correct.
that are, on there. Is that in which direction? Up?
Heading away from Rangy Road, so yes.
Everything flows down that way?
Yeah. It's pretty gradual, pretty steady across the whole site.
If we slow it down, it's gonna end up creating a problem for this lot as well, so.
So you said the way, well, that way, doesn't it seem like it's all gonna go left anyway?
I think if you had more of a drainage easement, I think that would be better.
Right, that would in effect act as a buffer area that's not maintained anymore, more vegetation, things like that would grow in that particular area. I definitely don't mind reviewing that with my client and bringing back some sort of proposal for that at the next meeting.
That would also leave a little bit more protection for Tobias properties on the side too.
Okay, yep. I think that covers all my questions. Anyone else? So we'll hold off on that, let you do a little more research and come back to us?
Yep, sounds like if I come back with good answers to that drainage easement and to the specifications that the private way is going to be built to, we might be getting pretty close.
I think so.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Does that need, a lot of other credits for that?
All subdivisions should have a irrevocable line of credit to the town until the road work is done, the infrastructure is done, to the standard.
Because that's a lot serving, because that's serving a lot, that needs a letter of credit.
And that was revised in March as well to be compliant with the state requirements, so we don't run into the overall issues.
So
I mean, in this particular case, with only serving one lot, aren't we in a position where you would just not issue the occupancy permit or the building permit until that road was complete?
Alright.
See, and again, to do that, Joe, but the issue's been in a lot of towns that have the same problem, including Wilmington. But Limerick has been more notorious. For 20 years, they've battled to correct a situation, and these people that live on that road have had to deal with it. So recently, we have accomplished in rectifying the issue so the town can proceed to fix the road. So if we don't get an irrevocable letter of credit and I hold an occupancy, and we do have this situation in town right now, one person hasn't allowed me to do an inspection, so I'm not gonna issue an occupancy, and she's still gonna move. So that isn't really giving the town the leverage it needs. So an irrevocable letter of credit, it doesn't tie up financing or monies to the developer. So it's just a better way to go. And the other specification that was amended is before the planning board or select board can sign off on it, the letter of irrevocable credit has to be reviewed by the attorneys. So this way the town is totally protected and we're not gonna end up with Violaire Drives or Kofi Drives now when it was never finished. So it doesn't leave the taxpayers holding the purse. That's why we do that.
Yeah, I get it if there's multiple landowners and multiple people it affects, but once the road is done, it's done. The people can't move in until that's complete, you know. If they choose not to build this road and choose not to build this home for 10 or 15 years, we're just gonna keep renewing a line of credit for what amounts to a driveway?
Well, part of the subdivision is the road is gonna be built, so again, that's it. And then let's use Limington again for another example, Tucker Road. That was a town road, the developer destroyed that road, and without the performance bond or a irrevocable letter of credit, that cost the town last year $80,000 it did not have to fix that road. So again, we have to act on behalf of the town.
I'm not trying to argue with you here, we get along great, but I struggle to see where the town might be on the hook for anything, and related to this private way.
So what could be done is there could be a 50-foot wide right-of-way left to a vacant lot up there that could not have a dwelling on it until that had the road built to town standard. That would be a different, is that correct? That could be, you could have a 50-foot wide right-of-way to a wooded park, or to a parcel that's not part of the two lots, and there'd have to be a subdivision revision at that time to come back and put in a road and.
We would have to flag it. We used to be able to do deed restrictions, and deed restrictions the town can't enforce, so that is more of a civil issue. So again, to look on, like Aaron said, the third lot could be flagged so that if somebody does develop it, they have to bring that right of way up to standards. And at that point, they'd be required to do a irrevocable letter of credit as well.
Right, to me it's no different, it's serving one lot, it's no different than each person needing a septic system. Like, when you construct your property and build your house, that's when these monies are spent, that's when this loan is obtained to help, this construction cost is often gonna be wrapped up into the construction cost of that house. It's not necessarily, he's not gonna necessarily run out and build the road 30 days after the approval. He could sell all 3 lots, and the next person might be the one that's gonna foot the bill for building that. I apologize, I do private ways in lots of different towns. I've never heard of a letter of credit for a single lot private way, so I'm having a hard time grasping it.
Again, the old standard was a performance bond. Performance bonds have loopholes all through them, and then it becomes a town's battle to get the monies on a performance bond. So, and depending on the performance bond, the town isn't always covered with the labor cost, it might be just materials. So, the irrevocable letter of credit allows the town to go to the bank, say this is what we need, they give us the money, and the bank has to deal with it. So, the other thing here too is, and again in another town this situation happened, is that right-of-way could actually become access to all 3 lots. So it could ultimately, at some point in the future, become servicing 3 different homes or more. So that's, again, another standard that has to be, so the town don't say coulda, woulda, and shoulda.
Okay, it's just new for me. Most of the towns have the road commissioner view the private way after it's built, and you can't get your building permit or your occupancy permit until that point.
That is true, but again, the
No
occupancy.
performance bond necessary, no letter of credit necessary. You just can't proceed until the road commissioner says that's done, correct?
So Stan, how do you view this as different than the one we just did down off Enterprise Road? How is it different than that? Can you tell me the difference? Because that has multiple houses, that needed to have a letter of credit?
Yes.
But do you still think this one's the same, where it has one, just because it has one dwelling doesn't mean it's any different than that one that has multiple dwellings?
Correct. If the chance is that the town's gonna have to rebuild or build or complete the infrastructure, then the town needs to protect itself.
What would be the situation in which the town would have to do that? Just describe that again.
Well, again, a good example is the way Drive. The contractor went belly up and abandoned the project, so Alea Drive became a town problem. And we couldn't do anything until we resolved all the legal issues with it, which now is, I think that started in the mid-70s. So we are in 2022.
Doesn't sound like that's a single lot private way to me, though. It sounds like a very different circumstance.
We don't really have a single lot private way.
That's true. When-
I don't think it's any different. It's a road and a subdivision is what it's considered, so, I don't think it has any distinction there.
So really what we're saying is lot 3 isn't a buildable lot until changes have been made to lot 1 with the easement.
That's correct.
But it doesn't mean it can't be a lot, it just can't be a buildable lot until
That's
that
correct.
requirement is met.
Into the roads, though.
Until
Correct.
the road's built.
So does that affect whether it's subdividable?
No. It's subdividable either way,
Right,
and the developer can decide which way they wanna do it.
which is a
They would have to-
stipulation.
They would have to come back for a revision if they wanted to create a building lot in that back lot, because then they would have to use this road design.
And that's for any changes to the approved subdivision, any changes that are considered beyond minor, will have to come back before the planning board for a revision.
Well, they wouldn't have this 50-foot wide, they just have a 50-foot wide right of way to a vacant piece of land.
Yeah.
I guess that's up to him to decide. It has, because he's using it as his frontage, if he had 175 feet along that frontage and wanted to put his road up through there, that's not a problem. We don't, if he had a long driveway, that's fine. But because he's using it as his frontage to the back of the lot, because he's using it as his frontage, it has to be, meet town standards, and I guess it has to have a lawn, so,
And that would be consistent with what we've done in the past.
that's right, so. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. You all set, Joe?
Yep.
Okay. We're gonna go on to Alea Drive. Back to Alea Drive here. So I have some questions about how this was written up, about the lot 1 having an easement across it. How do we make sure that this is shown that both parties have this easement, have this area that is 50-foot wide? And with the pavement and all that stuff, that it's not just an easement across the first lot, it's this entire parcel is an access easement for both lots.
I think
And
it's gotta
and
be,
it's jointly owned, is that correct?
Yes, it would have to be deeded in both deeds.
yeah.
It can't be though.
I'm sorry?
It can't be because the first lot doesn't have enough frontage if we deeded in both deeds.
So the way this has been drawn up, this is the lot divide between the two. So lot 2 has this easement across lot 1 to get to it. Lot 1 has this easement for turnaround on the driveway. So the lot divide as it's drawn up is here.
So
So-
both lots
so
will
both-
have, both lots will have an easement drawn on the deed?
Correct. Each
Depicted on the
lot
deed.
will have a description of, lot 1 will have a description of this area, which will be the easement on lot 2 for lot 1. And then lot 2's deed will have a description of this easement that's on lot 1 to serve lot 2.
The other thing that should be deeded in there as well is that between both owners, there's a maintenance agreement for that. So that there doesn't end up, again, being a battle. There should be some sort of agreement on both deeds.
How do we stay out of that? But
That's what the deed is for. So,
I don't wanna be responsible for policing that.
no, that is not an enforcement issue or a town issue. It just clarifies between property owners the responsibilities and their rights and that. So that eliminates, again, a case where one neighbor doesn't want to do something, and again, it gives them both a legal stance. It's got nothing to do with the town. It's just looking out for the future owners.
And the important thing is it divides up how much each lot is, is held accountable for, right? In this case, each lot owner would be eligible for half of the private way of the road.
Is that acceptable? If one lot is responsible for the first section and the other one. So what happens if one guy pushes it up to the, it's like, I pushed it to my boundary, you pushed the rest to yours.
No, and that's what will happen. I think again, this is up to the hands, but that should be a shared maintenance agreement, not particularly saying, well, I'm only gonna cover this section. It should be a shared maintenance agreement, similar to an association, but that eliminates the situation we had on Foss Road, where the actual went to the appeals board.
Can you put the notes on the plan?
Yeah.
So, like Joe did with each of the parts of the minor subdivision.
Sure.
So, that way we have once this is registered, the code enforcement officer can pull out the plan and say, all these conditions are met. So,
Can you send me a copy of that plan and I can? Sure.
so that, we have 13, so, what's that? How did you do that, Joe?
Which part?
So you did the notes, I thought you did them all by the number of the submissions, but it doesn't look like you did.
Oh, no, I didn't correspond them to your ordinance, if that's.
That's what I was thinking you did, but apparently
I
you didn't.
went through each of the things you asked for, and tried to put an answer for it on there, but it's not necessarily in the same order.
Okay.
You want them in the order of the ordinance?
It should reference the ordinance number,
Okay.
just to be clear.
Would that be a big hassle for you, Joe, to do that?
Nope.
That way, when they go through, like if they go to review, they pull it out and say, met all the submissions for minor subdivision. Seems very. any questions on that? I think that's okay to do, or?
I think it's a good idea.
I think what's been happening, one thing that's happening is there's a subdivision plan that gets registered, and then there's the notes that get registered, and or that don't really get registered, they just kind of float around, and then down the road, nobody really knows what was approved, so it makes it a lot easier years later. So I'm trying to find a minor subdivision requirements. I think it's. Okay, so 13 things there,
13 of them, okay.
yeah. And if there's a waiver or whatever, then you can list that on the plan as well.
Yep.
I'm not sure what you did on that as far as soil erosion sedimentation control plan. Is that something you did or requested a waiver, or is that?
We have not provided that information, and happy to do so.
Okay, so I will make sure you go down through each of those 13 things and make sure you have an answer for all of those.
Yep.
And if there's a waiver that you think you'd like to request, then do that in writing.
Will do.
We also go through the state performance, so that's the state subdivision Title 30A, but I don't think any of that really applies, so.
Okay.
I think you're okay with that. Does anyone else have any questions?
Not necessarily. I mean, I guess my big concern is that these are new construction, like it's new construction, and that we're kind of doing this after the fact. You know, they put 2 houses in here and they built them, and so now we're being asked as a town to kind of approve one of them being a smaller lot size. You know, like
I understand.
yeah. So I guess that's my.
I don't like it, but I think this is where we are, and
Yeah.
I think it slipped a little bit through the cracks, and we're trying to fix it so that it is correct. So, as correct as it can be.
Yeah, I guess my big thing is I want to make sure that there's no extra burden on the town just to make this work, so.
Yeah, I agree. So, do you think there's a concern for that?
No, my concern was the parking, but if that doesn't need to be monitored or enforced by the town, then, you know, then it's a private matter or a matter for police.
Yeah.
My concern was that this would have to be another stop on stands or somebody else's rounds throughout the town, and it would, you know, it slowly adds up.
I agree. Okay, do you have any questions for us?
No, I've got some good direction from you guys, so thank you.
All right, so, I think as soon as you get that information to us, we can move forward and get this finished up.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
And so that, Stan said you'll need to get a letter of credit, or the applicant will need to get a letter of credit to Stan, and that's.
Yeah, I assume that'll be just to bring from what's currently there up to current standards.
That's 150%, is that correct?
150% of the cost.
Okay. And that's required at what stage?
Well, it's supposed to be done before construction starts.
Right. In this case,
Correct, probably prior to us signing the.
signing the Mylar?
The Mylar.
Gotcha.
No, the ordinance now says that you cannot sign the Mylar or approve the final approval until the attorneys have reviewed the irrevocable letter of credit.
Okay.
So,
So we can issue the final approval but not sign it, is that correct?
Correct,
Or we can issue the final approval contingent upon that letter of credit. So
But you just can't sign it.
won't hold up another meeting just because
Yeah.
we can, okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, I will talk to the applicant and have them prepare that for you guys.
Okay. We have some minutes from April 17th. Is there a motion on those?
All motion to approve?
Okay, so motion approved, a second. I'll second it. Do you want to second it?
I'll second.
All right, good. Motion and second, any discussion on that? Okay, then, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Sandy, you have any more for us?
Not today. I
Today?
got more, but not today.
We did get some correspondence from the lawyer regarding the potential subdivision, or, I don't know what you would call that.
We've got a
So-
couple.
The one, for John Mancini.
Okay, but, yes, John has mentioned that he wants to put 4 buildings or 4 condos, off in off in Washington, I'm sorry. But there's another one that's in the wings, and that is to complete Proki subdivision and actually expand it. But the other thing is, I believe I sent the planning board the emails for, the select board is having a public hearing for the amendments to the junkyard section, which is section G, just the verbiage, changing it from vegetation to, trees. So, and the other thing is, I don't know if you reviewed it, the floodplain, it's mandatory to do it, so FEMA actually gave us the draft, and we had to tailor our existing one from 1989.
I looked it over, I didn't see a huge changes.
What FEMA changed was the actual identifications. It used to be A1 and A2 and A3, now it's A or AE. The new maps haven't changed at all, so we will put those on the website as soon as I get them.
So, Ben told you that as far as he knew John's subdivision, John's lots needed a subdivision.
Correct. But
Okay.
again,
So, and
again,
you-
it's very easy to misinterpret it, but it does say specifically in 3 places in LD 2003 that this does not circumvent the subdivision under chapter 4. So, that was clarified.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But the town can't do, LD 2003 restricts the town from creating more stringent or eliminating the ability for affordable housing, is what that does.
All right, anything else for us? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion and a second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you, have a good night.